administration seeks out the best offer from trading partners this week ahead of the self-imposed July 8 deadline. Filipino economists weigh in on how the Philippines can best negotiate with the interests of Filipinos in mind. Trade negotiations with the U.S. are continuing, says Trade Secretary Cristina Roque, following a report saying Washington wanted trading partners to submit their best offers this week. Earlier this week, Ibon Foundation's Executive Director, Sunny Africa, told me on this program the Philippines trade negotiators ought to reset the narrative, serving Filipinos first.
And since 2008, 2009, they've actually been increasing their protectionist measures. So it's not just a Trump thing. It has actually been building up in the U.S. for the last, well, basically 4 administrations now. And I think that is shaking things up. We're seeing a more siloed world, a more compartmentalized world. And the Philippines still, clings on to this vain hope that just simply opening up to foreign investment in foreign goods will be what will work for us. We just say, the U.S. sees that opening up to foreign investment in foreign goods hasn't worked for them. If the world's biggest economic power doesn't think that helps them, it seems weird that the Philippines thinks that that same sort of, old school free market thinking is what we need. So we really need some sort of a resetting, I think, of our economic policies.
With us now for more from Davao is former Tariff Commissioner and Senior Economist George Manzano. Good to see you, George. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me, Kathy.
So what do you make of what Sunny said there? He's basically saying protect our domestic economy first, exactly what the U.S. is doing for its own.
Well, we have to look at it in light of the reciprocal tariffs of President Trump that has created really quite a stir in the world economy. It changed basically our perception and our expectations of the role of the United States in the world trading system. For many years, Asian societies have grown rich through exporting to the U.S. Now, because of the reciprocal tariffs policy, we're seeing that the United States is now signaling to the world that it is no longer wants to be, quote unquote, the consumer of the last resort. And this has forced a rethinking of not only the Philippines, of all the actors in the world trading community on the approach. Is the U.S. still a reliable player? It once was. Will trade with the U.S. or trade in general will still drive economic growth and development? And what will happen to the supply chain? Is there a new paradigm when it comes to market access, where export markets are simply, access to export markets are simply a function of one's competitiveness or efficiency? Or does politics play now a major role, whether you're a friend or a foe of the powers that be? There are also changes in the technology war between China and the West, creating, basically cost for countries on whether which technology to adopt. So all of these things are coming up into the mess, no? And so
it is. It's a huge mess. Yeah. In fact, you say that it did, reset the whole understanding that we have of the global trade order. So how would you respond to the view that while opening up has advantages, I mean, if we've left domestic producers alone and not given them support, we won't be in a position to take advantage of that opening up?
Yes. Actually, we can look at it in at 2 levels. In the short-term level, I guess we cannot retaliate. We need to keep our trade channels open, and that we need to have, to be realistic on that the U.S. is still our biggest export market, and it is too big and too rich to lose. So I think our objective, short-term objective, is to continue to secure the market in whatever way we can. Maybe and in the long term, we can start about looking for alternative markets, looking for cooperation measures with other bodies such as the EU or the RCEP in that respect. No? But in the meantime and in the immediate timeline, we need to secure the U.S. market, and for that, we will have to articulate, no, and look at what's happening in Washington.
Right. We'll pick up on that, the articulation and also securing the market, and for who? And it better be the Filipino people. Let's pick up on our conversation there on the domestic producers, George, because it is important that we do a Filipino-first narrative for our own sake and ensure that we know which domestic producers are able to withstand the competition from overseas. In this 90-day pause, which ones have you identified as the most competitive, those which will be resilient if and when those tariffs come through?
Well, the most resilient so far are those that have that are exempted. No? Basically, the semiconductor sector that we have, simply because they are really intertwined in the global value chain. At the same time, we also need to import because in this day and age of production network or fragmentation of production network, you need to import in order to export, because seldom do you see a country that produces 100% of the product. Now even iPhones and most electronic products, even transportation, use parts and components that they source from everywhere else. Now, for that to work, there should be freer flow of trade. At the same time, very efficient logistics. But that has to be counterbalanced, as we've seen in previous episodes of crisis like the COVID, of resiliencies, of having buffer stocks. No? So when it comes to with the U.S., I think we have an advantage when it comes to our semiconductors, which incidentally is one of the biggest or the major exports that we have.
It is, and it
to
is
the
indeed
United
exempt
States.
for now.
And
I mean,
it
that
is
could
exempt for now.
change, George. I mean, the exemptions could change with how we've seen how Trump's mind changes. But the baseline 10% is still in effect. And we've probably
Yes.
seen the impact of what 10% can do to our industries. Which have you seen are the most sensitive or maybe vulnerable industries so far in these 45 days?
I think in the sensitive industries, I can only talk about the characteristics of that product that will be most affected. The most affected products will be products that we export to the United States, for which the U.S. has also local production, right? And so coconut oil, they might not have coconuts, but it's also another factor is products that we export to the United States, for which the United States have substitutes for. So those kinds of products are very sensitive to tariffs. Certain agricultural products that we export, for which there are other countries, perhaps like Ecuador or Latin America, that have even lower reciprocal tariffs than we do, that that will compete with our products.
Yeah,
but
coconut oil, as you mentioned. I mean, Charlie Avila was just on this show of Coco Fed, and he did mention the challenges that we have internally here in the Philippines, focusing on the supply shortage alone and the low yields. But you did make a mention of diversification, and a lot of the economists we speak with say that is key. You've got the opportunity to liaise even more closely with the ASEAN, and there is also the pending EU Free Trade Agreement, and also the CPTPP. I mean, we're back towards those acronyms now because, as you made a mention, this is the second phase that we have to liaise with the bigger partnerships we can make. So what's the strategy there then? How do we move forward when we're now ready to talk partnerships?
Well, the strategy in partnership is to engage in cooperation with these other countries. And one of the linchpin cooperation there will be in terms of open and freer trade, as well as an open and freer investments, foreign direct investments. And so if the U.S. will close, its market becomes more inward-oriented, then basically we will have to look for alternative markets for the products that we produce, for products in which we have basically comparative advantage. And opening up to these alternative markets is, I guess, the logical next move, because we cannot rely on United States, depending on the mood of President Trump, of whether they will continue opening or closing. There's a lot of uncertainty that will crop up in the case of decisions in the United States administration. But more importantly, what we can do is to develop greater cooperation in terms of standards, in terms of tariff regime, in terms of regulation with these other bodies, because we would like to inject, or we would like to participate in the global value chains that they have. We would like to have a demonstration effect that if we engage with value chains with these groups of countries, we can demonstrate that that you can produce products which are a lot cheaper than products with countries that try to close on with themselves. And also, and in this manner, you can even attract the United States to continue engaging with the world economic orders, and to establish also rules, because trading rules right now are, we know, in tatters. The World Trading Organization rules are tatters with the emergence of the reciprocal tariffs. But if you have a subset of countries large enough to consume, and large enough and diverse enough to produce parts and components, and have their own global value chain, then that will be, a way for us to access the mainstream economic routes.
That's true. It's really good to be reminded that we do have those silver linings, even as you mentioned, global trade order is in tatters. Thank you so much, George, for your insights. Really appreciate it. George Manzano joining us live from Davao.